I am Barristan of House Selmy, a name that now commands a somber respect across the warring reaches of Westeros. Yet it began as a mere whisper amidst the swaying wheat of Harvest Hall. My house, the Selmys, are marchers of the Stormlands, men whose nobility is forged in the iron of the sword and the unyielding soil of our ancestors. I was born the first son of Sir Lionel Selmy, raised in a fortress where the air tasted of salt from the narrow sea and the relentless rains of the Storm King's legacy. My childhood was defined by the clatter of practiced blades and the stern silence of my father, a man who believed that a knight's honor was not a garment to be worn on feast days, but a heavy burden to be carried until the grave. In the shadow of our stone walls, I learned the rhythm of fealty before I understood the complexities of the world, dreaming of the white cloak as if it were a celestial mantle promised by the Seven themselves. My first true trial of mettle arrived when I was but 10 years of age, a lad possessed of more spirit than stature. At the tourney at Blackhaven, I donned a suit of borrowed rusted plate that clattered with every step, my eyes peering through a visor that threatened to swallow my face. The lords and seasoned knights erupted in mockery as I entered the lists, a small squire playing at war. Yet I spurred my mount against Prince Duncan Targaryen, the Prince of Dragonflies. The impact of his lance felt like the heavens collapsing upon my chest, sending me spiraling into the dirt and blood of the tourney grounds. It was there, amidst the laughter, that Prince Duncan reached down his hand and bestowed upon me the moniker that would define my life: Barristan the Bold. 6 years hence, at King's Landing, I was no longer that trembling boy. Before the eyes of King Aegon V, I unhorsed the prince and challenged the legendary Sir Duncan the Tall. That day, when the king's steel touched my shoulders, I knew my destiny lay not in the harvests of my home, but in the whitewashed halls of the Kingsguard. The War of the Nine-Penny Kings was my baptism in the visceral reality of slaughter. In the year 260 after the conquest, when the Blackfyre pretenders emerged from the shadows of the east to claim the Iron Throne, I sailed with the royal host to the cursed reaches of the Stepstones. Those islands were a labyrinth of jagged rock and shifting sands, where the stench of brine mingled with the copper tang of fresh blood. Among the usurpers stood a creature of nightmare, Meleys Blackfyre, aptly named Meleys the Monstrous. It was whispered he had devoured his own twin in the womb, and a second grotesque head sprouted from his neck like a malignant fruit. He was a titan of raw, unbridled malice, capable of felling chargers with a single blow of his mace. I watched from the vanguard as he carved a path through our lines, leaving a trail of shattered armor and broken men in his wake, his roars drowning out the cries of the dying. In the heart of that carnage, as our commander, Ser Baratheon, fell mortally wounded, I realized that the salvation of the realm required the death of that singular horror. I cut a path through the sellsword ranks, my blade singing a dirge for the fallen, until I stood before the monstrosity of Meleys. Our duel was a dance between celestial grace and demonic fury. He swung his mace with the force of a falling star, but I, tempered by years of discipline, found the gaps in his defense. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I drove my steel into the throat of the pretender, ending the Blackfyre line with a single stroke of cold iron. With his fall, the backbone of the rebellion shattered. That same year, in recognition of my valor, I was summoned to the Kingsguard. To wear the white cloak was the pinnacle of my aspirations. Yet I did not then realize that the purity of the cloth would be far harder to maintain than the sharpness of my blade in the years of darkness to come.
Service under Aerys II was a slow descent into a labyrinth of paranoia and flame. Initially, Aerys was a sovereign of grand visions, but the Iron Throne has a way of sharpening the madness in a man's soul. The Defiance of Duskendale was the catalyst that fractured the realm forever. Lord Darklyn had taken the king captive, and Lord Tywin Lannister sat outside the walls with a massive host, threatening to raise the city to ash if the king was not surrendered. I knew that at the first sound of an assault, Aerys would be the first to die. Thus, I volunteered for a mission that many deemed a fool's errand, to infiltrate the Dun Fort alone and extract my king from the jaws of death. That night, the sky above Duskendale was a shroud of ink. Without armor, clad only in the dark, I scaled the sheer stone walls of the fortress, cliffs so treacherous that even the mountain goats avoided them. Every slip was a promise of a bone-crushing end, yet my oath acted as a tether to the heights. Inside the fort, I became a phantom amidst the shadows, dispatching sentries in silence until I reached the damp, wretched dungeon where the king was held. The sight was a dagger to my heart. Aerys, once a man of splendor, was now a hollowed husk, his hair a matted silver mane, and his eyes darting with the frenzy of a trapped animal. I led him out through the bowels of the castle, just as the alarm bells began their frantic peal. Our escape was a desperate gauntlet of steel. I fought with the king at my back, my sword flickering like lightning in the dark. Sir Simon Hollard, a knight of great skill and an old friend, barred our path, and I was forced to slay him to fulfill my vow. We breached the gates just as they were being barred, and though the king was saved, his soul remained in that dungeon. The Aerys who emerged was no longer a king, but a tyrant who found solace only in the emerald glow of wildfire and the screams of those he deemed traitors. As his shield, I was forced to stand witness to atrocities that stained my honor more than any battlefield defeat ever could. The tourney at Harrenhal tasted of winter roses and impending doom. It was the year of the false spring, a brief reprieve from the cold that brought the realm together in a grand celebration, unaware that we were dancing on the precipice of a volcano. I unhorsed night after night until I faced Prince Rhaegar in the lists. Rhaegar, in his black plate encrusted with rubies, was the very image of Targaryen majesty. Our lances shattered again and again, but in the end, it was the prince who triumphed. If I had unhorsed him that day, perhaps he would never have crowned Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty. That single crown of blue winter roses was the spark that ignited Robert's rebellion. When Rhaegar disappeared with Lyanna, and the king burned Lord Stark and his heir, the realm descended into a madness of its own. I remained loyal to my vows, standing with the mad father and the beloved son, even as the world burned around us. The Battle of the Trident was the final judgment of our era. I fought beside Rhaegar in the churning waters of the river, the air thick with the screams of the dying and the thunder of clashing steel. I watched as Robert Baratheon's warhammer crushed the prince's chest, sending rubies scattering into the water like droplets of frozen blood. I fought until I was riddled with wounds, an arrow in the shoulder, a spear thrust in the side, until the darkness took me. When I awoke, I was in Robert's tent. He, the victor, offered me pardons instead of the headsman's axe, acknowledging that no king could ask for a more faithful guardian. I took the oath again, my heart heavy with the ghosts of the dragons I had failed to protect. For 15 years, I served Robert, watching the slow decay of a man who was built for war, but broken by peace. The realm was quiet, but it was a silence built on corruption and the rot of the Lannister influence. And I, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, searched in vain for the honor I had lost in the waters of the Trident.
If thou seekest to dwell within the heart of fantasy, to escape this weary, mundane realm for but a fleeting hour each week, then bind thy soul to this journey and subscribe. When the acclaim of 100,000 likes is reached, the chronicle shall continue, and the winds of winter shall begin to howl in our next tale.
After the death of Robert Baratheon, the masks fell away, revealing the true, hideous face of power in King's Landing. Joffrey, a boy of singular cruelty and no merit, ascended the throne and immediately sought to desecrate the sanctity of the King's Guard. In the throne room, before the gathered nobility who stank of fear and ambition, he accused me of being too old for service, seeking to strip me of the mantle I had sworn to wear until death. Cersei Lannister watched with her ice-cold eyes, savoring my humiliation. But they did not know Barristan Selmy. They did not realize that a knight's strength is not in his youth, but in the iron will forged in 100 battles. I cast down my white cloak, the very symbol of my life's work, upon the floor. That cloth was no longer a badge of honor. It had become a chain that bound me to the service of monsters. I drew my sword, not to kill, but to remind them of the reality they had forgotten. Even now, I could cut through the 5 of you like carving a cake. Send your guards to fetch the body of the old man you deemed useless. I walked out of that hall, the Lannister guards recoiling from my presence as if I were a ghost. They attempted to seize me at the castle gates, but with my bare hands and the cunning of a man who had survived a dozen wars, I escaped their clutches. I was no longer a knight in service to a hollow crown. I was a free man, capable once more of seeking true justice. In the squalid, winding alleys of the capital, I masked my identity, watching the common folk wither under the Lannister yoke. It was there that I resolved to find the last true scion of the dragons. I crossed the narrow sea, grew my beard long, and took a staff in hand, traveling as Arstan Whitebeard, a humble pilgrim seeking a way to atone for the mistakes of the past and restore glory to a land being consumed by the folly of its rulers. My journey in the east was a testament to my patience and vision. I sought out Daenerys Targaryen, the daughter of the king I had saved, and the sister of the prince I had fought for. When I found her in Qarth, I saw a girl burdened by the world, yet I soon realized she possessed the fire that made the great Targaryens the masters of the world. I remained by her side as Arstan, testing her heart as she burned the cities of Slaver's Bay to break the chains of the oppressed. I saw her use her dragons not for tyranny, but for a justice that Westeros had long forgotten. When I finally revealed my true self on the ship to Meereen, her anger was eclipsed by her understanding of my loyalty. I donned the white cloak once more, but this time it smelled of hope. I became her hand, and her Lord Commander, a man who carried the history of Westeros in his breast and could guide her through the labyrinth of Eastern politics. Now, in the city of Meereen, I stand in the eye of yet another storm. The Queen is missing, and a myriad of enemies encircle the city like vultures. Treachery lurks in every shadow, and the scent of blood is thick on the desert wind. I, Barristan Selmy, an old man who thought his days of war were behind him, have donned my armor once more. I am now the regent of this chaotic city, the shield that stands between civilization and the darkness. I have witnessed the fall of kings and the rise of usurpers. But here, at the edge of the world, I have found the true meaning of knighthood. It is not about standing beside a powerful monarch. It is about standing for the truth when all else is falling into ruin. The drums of Yunkai echo on the horizon, and I polish my sword for the final time. Death may be close, but I meet it with an unburdened heart. I am Barristan, the knight who never broke his vow, and my story shall be etched into the annals of time with the honor it deserves. Barristan Selmy.